In part 4, I want to take you back to the beginning. Stonehenge, United Kingdom. This is where I began all my research into following the Solstice Line. And when I overlaid a blueprint of Stonehenge on Stonehenge, I noted there was only one entrance and exit clear, and that was on the summer solstice. And noting other discoveries made that year, that of elongated skulls found in the area, and a place called Superhenge. Also, if you'll note, it's on the summer solstice line. So I determined to follow the solstice and see where it led. And I could note some older research done about the solstice line from Stonehenge, leading across a couple of important spots. I did not find anyone else who had actually followed the solstice to its conclusion, so I determined to follow it around the world. There's London, and you can note how close it is to the actual solstice line. Passes directly over Cambridge, and Norwich is in close proximity. Notice that there is a circular coastline where it exits, and we're into the North Sea. Heading straight for Denmark, I found that there were over 200,000 subterranean Neolithic tunnels and caves that mostly are destroyed now. And there were also subterranean works in the UK too. And I started noting that little islands like that actually act as pointers. And there's been a recent find that this coastline might be artificially straight. And there's Helsinki into the Gulf of Finland. It travels in close proximity to St. Petersburg. This is a very amazing place that records determine that most of this structure was done without the tools or measuring tools necessary to do this complicated work. Note the Greco-Roman and the Muslim, or rather Ottoman, connection to the building construction styles. That's the onion-topped roof. And remember St. Petersburg, because it's a very important crossing, and we'll get to that later. I determined that this was one of a particularly unusual site that acted like a node that people used in traveling the earth. And when you note how rugged and rural this territory is, where it crosses through Russia, you note also circular structures along the way, that the population, according to our records, or Soviet records, has never existed in this area. Most of the towns and villages are 20,000 people and under. Now you'll note that I brought it back to north at this point, because summer solstice turns into a winter solstice line. Now this is a map determined to be 150 million years old. And these are some of the standing stone structures through the Ural Mountains. This is a nanite sized gold material that is obviously machined. And this is also found in the Ural Mountain area. As we continue to travel towards the east, we cross into Mongolia. And there you note that we're now in a winter solstice line. Now, Mongolia is made up of the Gobi Desert, very desolate, and it's also made of some tundra, a very, very amazing site that contains a lot of pyramidal structures and these amazing figures that easily are monolithic in nature. But you'll notice they're also Chinese in custom. And we pass straight through Shaanxi. This is a very important site because this is where they've found the pyramid of the Great Yellow Emperor. And you'll note all of these subterranean structures are similar to the ones in Turkey. Now, if you'll note, these terracotta warriors are very similar to the ones in Mongolia. So it seems that China had more of an influence on Mongolia than Mongolia had on China. Brings into question whether or not Genghis Khan ever existed. Exiting through China, you'll note that we're also through a circular coastline and entering directly over Taipei City. And then into Papua New Guinea, which is amazing for the amount of gold that's still being pulled out of here. And the highlands of New Guinea are particularly where this crossing occurs. You'll note the other line here. This is a line that comes off of another monolithic site that I will get to. And as we cross into the Pacific, you'll note that it comes up across Santiago City in South America. I've also noted that the winter solstice line from Catalina Island also points to this exact same place. And following this solstice takes us across South America itself into the mouth of the Amazon and into the Atlantic and back across Stonehenge proper. As we zoom in, I want you to note that this winter solstice line, moving from the upper left to the lower right, is a major crossing. And note also the circular sites all over London. This is not a coincidence. This is a building technique. Subterranean structures have been found all over the UK now, even under London itself. And I wanted to note that the distance between London proper and the winter solstice line and Paris and the winter solstice line are almost equally the same. It's about 60 miles from London to the winter solstice line. Right there, you'll note it's about 60 miles. And then taking that from the line to Paris you'll note it's just about the same. I don't think this is a coincidence. I think this line was used by Sir Francis Bacon, and it marks something the Masons use. The two columns in the front of every Masonic entrance are representative of the obelisks that were taken from the Luxor temple in Giza. Note that we're crossing over Greece, and these are historic, amazing sites that we're crossing over. These are not simple sites. This shows that this line was actually used as navigation. And where does this line go? Well, it goes to the exact northwest corner of the Great Pyramid itself at Giza, traveling over the apex and exiting to the southeast. Note that the winter solstice and the summer solstice lines are the same angles as that come off of the Great Pyramid itself. Now, continuing to follow this line to the southeast, you'll note that we cross over a place in what's now Saudi Arabia, and this passes close to a town called Aden. I would note also the coastline is also circular, where it exits, crossing into the lower South Pacific and Antarctic regions. You'll note that there are some rectangular structures that the rectangular structures are actually in the deepest parts of the ocean itself. And this line crosses across Baja California into Mexico proper and the Chihuahua, Mexico desert, over the Marfa Plateau. It heads across the country, the heart of the country, to a place called Fort Aztlan, or Aztlan, Wisconsin. This has long been thought to be the mythical home in the creation story of the Incas. Note that this has an Orion's Belt type setup and crosses over a step pyramid located in Wisconsin. Across Canada, it exits through Newfoundland and back across the North Atlantic. We return to Stonehenge proper. Crossing at the altar of Stonehenge. I wanted to note that on a north-south line, you go across Karnak and the Karnak stones of France. Now, I believe that these are connected, and you'll note that it's slightly off on the map, but I believe that's due to precession of the Earth and time itself, that these were one time on a direct north-south basis to the middle of Spain itself. And as I've shown before, Spain itself is a great Stonehenge. And the north-south line crosses the Sahara there, where not much is known, and I can't find a whole lot of history due to the slave trade destruction of most of Africa's history. And next time we'll enter at Machu Picchu and show you the Great Line from Machu Picchu. Thank you for your views.